How the Italian Mafia took over America. The story of how the Italian Mafia rose to dominate America is one of grit, blood, and shadowy business dealings, a gripping narrative that spans decades. It's a tale of ambition fueled by immigrant struggles, America's Prohibition era, and the infiltration of nearly every industry imaginable. Sit back and prepare yourself for this deep dive into organized crime's grip on the American dream. The roots in Sicily. To understand how the Italian Mafia took over America, you have to start in Sicily. For centuries, small groups in Sicily operated as private protectors in a society riddled with corruption and violence. These protectors, what would evolve into the Cosa Nostra, offered security but demanded absolute loyalty. This culture of loyalty and power eventually made its way to America through Italian immigrants seeking better opportunities. Early immigration waves. The late 19th and early 20th centuries saw millions of Italians immigrating to the United States, escaping poverty and oppression. Many settled in cities like New York, Chicago, and New Orleans. However, for many of these immigrants, work was scarce and discrimination rampant. In their desperation, they turned to familiar institutions, the Mafia, for support, protection, and a sense of community. Prohibition, the Mafia's golden ticket. In 1920, America enacted Prohibition, outlawing the production, transportation, and sale of alcohol. While the government aimed to create a more moral society, it inadvertently opened the door for organized crime. The Mafia seized this opportunity with both hands. Overnight, bootlegging became one of the most profitable industries in the country. Families such as the Genovese and Gambino turned into multi-million-dollar enterprises almost exclusively off the illegal booze trade. Al Capone in Chicago famously amassed a $100 million fortune during this period, becoming a household name as he mingled violence with flair. Yet Prohibition was more than just a moneymaker. It gave the Mafia a blueprint for organizing their power, hierarchies, territories, and brutal enforcement. Infiltrating labor unions and business. When Prohibition ended in 1933, the Mafia didn't crumble, they evolved. By now, they were experts in operating under the radar. Their next step was to take control of labor unions, specifically in industries like construction, shipping, and garment manufacturing. Through fear and bribes, the Mafia could manipulate union bosses, control workers' strikes, and siphon money. The Teamsters Union most infamously became a playground for mob influence. They diversified into gambling, loan sharking, extortion, and even infiltrated legitimate businesses to launder money. The Commission, the Mafia's boardroom. By the 1930s, the Italian Mafia in America was no longer just a loose collection of gangs, it was an organized machine. Mobsters like Lucky Luciano knew that uniting the Mafia was essential to minimizing bloodshed and maximizing profits. Luciano established the Commission, a governing body that divided territories among the major crime families and resolved disputes without violence. It was the corporate side of organized crime, boardroom deals replacing street shootouts. Families like the Gambino, Genovese, and Bonanno each got their slice of the American underworld, and the money poured in. World War II, a surprising ally. The Mafia's influence wasn't just criminal, it became political. During World War II, U.S. Navy officials collaborated with mobster Lucky Luciano to protect ports from Nazi sabotage. The Mafia's connections to the docks and the ability to keep things orderly proved invaluable, showcasing their reach even into matters of national security. The Mafia and pop culture. By the mid-20th century, the Mafia had not only become a significant power player in America, but also a fascination for the public. Films like The Godfather romanticized their criminal empire, making them cultural icons. This wasn't far from reality. Mobsters were often revered in their neighborhoods as protectors and providers. Downfall begins, FBI and the RICO Act. The Mafia's control began to slip in the 1970s and 80s due to increasing government pressure. FBI agents like Joe Pistone, undercover as Donnie Brasco, worked to infiltrate families. Meanwhile, the RICO Act, Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, enabled prosecutors to target entire crime networks rather than individuals. High-profile trials exposed the Mafia's activities, shattering their code of silence known as omertà. Prominent figures like John Gotti, the so-called Teflon Don, were eventually imprisoned, marking the Mafia's decline. The Mafia today. While the Mafia is no longer at the peak of its power, it hasn't disappeared. It has shifted to smaller-scale operations, focusing on more low-profile but still lucrative ventures. The shadows it cast over America in its prime remain as a cautionary tale of ambition, corruption, and the consequences of unchecked power.